Friends, hello, this is Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the podcast where two writers sit down and talk about whatever comes to mind. Some guests I know and I invite, some guests I don't really know, but I'm curious about, and I want to see if they'll be on my show. Some guests get pitched to me by PR firms, but I'm always looking for somebody that I might look at them and be like, yeah, I think that's going to be a fun conversation. That's the most meaningful thing for me. It's got to be fun for me, because if it's not fun for me, then it's probably going to be shit listening to it. So anyway, that is the booking strategy for Making It Up. Before we get to our today's guest, who is excellent, and it was somebody who I invited, and I'm very happy that I spoke to her. Just a quick plug. I'm going to quickly plug Unbound Writer. And it's funny, today's guest also does editing and coaching as well. With Unbound Writer, I do one-on-one coaching. I have self-guided online classes, and I offer writing retreats and workshops. So you can check out everything at unboundwriter.com. And the really cool thing is, if you're interested in coaching, or actually in anything else that might be offered through Unbound Writer, you can set up a free meeting with me. There's a link on my website to schedule a quick Zoom call, so you can kind of tell me what you're looking for, and I can talk to you, and we can see if we're a good fit for each other. So there's zero commitment, and you can get a little bit more detail about your specific project and any questions you have on it. All right, so today I had Cynthia Swanson on my podcast. So Cynthia is a New York Times bestselling novelist. She writes standalone psychological suspense, very much like me. Her third project, or third book, she has an anthology as well, but her third standalone novel is Anyone But Her, which she released last year and has won all sorts of awards, including the Colorado Book Award. I was nominated for that. I did not win because Cynthia won, because, she's a tremendous writer. So we talked about that for a little bit. Cynthia, I think I've met before because we're both in the greater Denver area. But I sat on a panel with her, a local panel earlier this year, and I was just interested in listening to her. She didn't start writing, until later in life. Her first novel was published, hit the New York Times bestseller list when she was 50. With her third book, With Anyone But Her, she decided to self-publish it. And so I really wanted to talk to her about that, because it's just interesting to me, what's the mindset of self-publishing after you have a readership base. You're a New York Times bestselling author, and you make the decision to self-publish. When she was talking about it on the panel, it just sounded very smart. It sounded like a very, and I know there's other decisions that are put into it, meaning, maybe you didn't get the contract that you wanted from a publisher or whatever it is. The idea of self-publishing when you already have a name is intriguing. Not necessarily that I'm going to do it, but I was curious about the process. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about that, as well as her journey as well. And at the end, we make up a cool little story from a ghostly kind of a book. So Cynthia was great. You're going to love this episode. This is my conversation with Cynthia Swanson. So I feel like I know we were on a panel together earlier this year at Lighthouse, and I think maybe we've met before, but I remember kind of you talking at this panel, and I was just kind of intrigued, about, kind of going the self-publishing route, just to see, like, what is this going to be like? Right. And then you went and beat me in the Colorado Book Awards. Damn it.
Come on, how many times have you won that? Like 5 times or something like that?
I won it 5 times. Yeah, I can't complain. It was funny, right. My partner and I, we were going to go down and make a night of it and just spend the night down in Denver, because we're up in kind of the Boulder area. Yeah. And I woke up that morning deathly sick. Like, I don't know how. It was weird. So I didn't go. And then I'm like, All right. Well, there's the silver lining of not going is I
Yeah, right.
I
Yeah.
did.
So it's
But
kind of tough to like
congratulations.
be there
That
and
is that that's
I know.
awesome.
Yeah.
Were you there?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
was
a,
there.
it's a they the Colorado Humanities, they do such a good job, and it's so heartbreaking to see, their funding getting yanked from them and having to, I mean, they're very resourceful. They scrambled and they got donations and they got
They did a
matches.
fundraiser. They had a silent auction
It's
there. I mean, it was
amazing,
good.
but
Yeah,
it
it
just
was good.
is disgusting that, Doge is just like, as of Friday, you have no more funding.
It was
Um,
ridiculous.
so,
Yeah.
it was good to see how resilient they were. And I know at the Opera House there, it's a beautiful ceremony, and so I'm glad that you got to be there, and that's exciting that you won, and that must have been a thrill.
It was. It was great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really great.
Now, and I want to talk about that particular book and its road to publication and your efforts behind it, but just kind of backing up a little bit, because I don't know your history with writing. Were you somebody who right out of the gate, right out of college, is like, this is what I want to do, or were you sensible and had a real job?
It was a little complicated. Like I thought I wanted to do it as a kid. It's something I always wrote. I was one of those people that was always writing as a kid. So I just, I wanted to make a career as a writer. But when I was in high school, I discovered a love of architecture. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went to college. I went to architecture school for 2 years and I really loved it.
Which is very difficult. My understanding is that's a very complicated and challenging degree.
it is, and it was very fun. But I kept sneaking off to the English department and taking creative writing electives. And I finally had a professor in the spring of my sophomore year, and she sat me down and she said, look, I know you're an architecture major, and I don't know anything about your skills or your passion in that area, but I have to tell you that whatever you do, don't stop writing because you're really good.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
mean, I was 20 years old, and that was the most validating thing anyone had ever said to me. And it was
Hmm.
it represented a huge shift. I changed schools, I changed majors, I got an English degree, and I went on to work in PR and did some technical writing, and so kind of I was was working on the writing field, and I continued to write short stories and publish short stories. And I did that for a lot of years and wrote a couple of practice novels that
Hmm.
never went anywhere until my first novel was published. I was 50 years old and my first novel published, and that was The Bookseller, and that was in 2015, 10 years ago.
Isn't it wild that, and I know there were all these forces kind of working towards this same outcome, but that one person's one sentence to you,
Yep.
you completely shift your life. I mean, it sounds like you were on the precipice and you needed that sentence to be spoken by somebody in
Right.
order to do it.
Somebody, I mean, it's like different hearing that from like your mom. I mean, it's nice if
Of
it's your
course.
mom or your friend or whatever, but
Yeah.
like having somebody like that, like a professor, say that. But I really like sharing that story because I think that as we get older, we tend to forget that like people that are younger, like younger people, like they really do like it really does matter to them what you say. It sounds like sometimes it feels like they don't, especially if they're your own kids, but it really does matter. And like, so if you know a young person who has a passion or a talent for something, like just I always tell people like just tell them,
Yeah.
just tell them and give them some validation because you never know. You could change a person's life.
Right, because aren't we all filled with self-doubt most of the
Exactly.
time?
Exactly.
And
Yep.
you don't,
Yep.
right, and it just takes that one comment because you're constantly searching for any kind of validation, it feels like. And I think that does lessen as you get older, you get more confidence from just having experienced more life, or you
Right.
just don't care as much.
I was just going to say, mostly you just don't care.
Yeah, you're like, what? I don't care what you think about me.
Yeah.
But that's a massive career change. And what's also interesting to me is so your comment that your first published novel happened when you were 50. I started writing in my 30s, and my first published novel I was probably 41.
Mhm.
So this idea that like, oh, it's too late for me to do this is
Right.
like writing for one thing is probably one of those things that you could pick up. And I know people who have done this, pick it up at 70. Or you
Absolutely.
look at Hank, Philippi Ryan, she started publishing actively in her 50s for the first time. And, you just never know.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that is one of the great things about it. And especially these days, I really do think it's a great time to become a writer, explore being a writer, if that's something that you've always considered. I'd say this to anybody because there are so many more opportunities. There's a lot more opportunity for connection. There's a lot more opportunity for education. And I think we're not, yeah, I mean, like I remember when I was in my 20s, like they'd put out these books called like, you know, 20 under 30 and stuff like that, these anthologies. And it like you felt like I'm never gonna be one of those people,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't think that happens as much anymore, that people feel like if they don't make it by 30 in any field that they're a failure, but particularly in the creative arts.
Yeah. And how, I didn't study it. I never had aspiration. I just did it once out of it was a day that I just started. It was weird. And then it does make you reflect and think like, how are they supposed to know what they want to be when they're 20? Like, that's insane to me. Like, I understand if you're in college, you have to choose some kind of path. But the idea of so many people who choose majors and then end up doing nothing like architecture with that major is
Right.
because it takes time for yourself to come out.
Right, right, absolutely. Well, and I think some of those interests and passions still stay there. Like the architecture thing has stayed in my writing.
Right.
All
It's
of
all
my
creation.
Yeah, well, and all of my books feature a house or more than one house that's got some weirdness about it.
Yeah.
And that kind of theme has been there throughout all of my writing. It's because it's still a field that really fascinates me, and that I'm kind of always interested in what people are doing from a design perspective and what they've done from a design perspective historically over the years. Like in
Yeah.
Anyone But Her, my recent book, it's they live in this house on Cap Hill that was built in the 1890s and did time as a whorehouse. And so, and I just had so much fun kind of researching that and thinking about what a
Totally.
house like that would be like, and just walking down the streets of all those streets in Cap Hill and being like, yeah, that one could be it.
Right.
So
Right.
I love that kind of stuff.
I love that. And I want to explore a little bit. You had an interesting comment, and it's an optimistic comment that I want to talk about because I don't hear it a lot. Is like, what a great time to get into writing. I think we could easily counter that with a lot of different things. Um,
Absolutely.
and we have done that a lot on this show, which is why I want to explore the positive side of it, because that's a tremendously refreshing attitude
Yeah.
in the face of everything you hear about these days, trying to become breaking. And I'm talking specifically maybe commercial fiction novels, the traditional route, agents and all that kind of stuff. But you make a good point. I mean, we're both coaches. There's a lot of resources where you can hire people to help your writing, not this generic books about how to write a thriller or whatever.
Right.
But you see a lot of that opportunity out there, clearly.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge caveat with that, which is that, as I think we both know, there are a tremendous amount of books that are published. Is it something like 7,000 books a day or something like that in the US? I mean, it's huge.
Yeah.
And that's counting the self-publishing market, which is certainly a huge percentage of that. And that ends up being problematic for readers because how do they find good writing? Especially if you are self-published, and how do you break into that? And I think, and I always tell people that I'm working with, as you said, that I'm working with as a developmental editor or coach is, I mean, your writing has to be stellar to begin with, regardless of your publishing path. Your writing has to be stellar.
Yeah.
And if it's not, because there's just too much else out there, and you I think you owe it to your readers. You really do. This is another thing I always tell people when I teach classes or when I work with somebody, is that readers are giving you such a huge gift, and the gift is their time. I mean, they might have given you some of their money, but whatever. The really big thing they're giving you is their time.
Yep.
And so I always feel like it's to be respectful of that time. I have to be providing them with the highest quality product I possibly can, the best quality book that I can, and I'm not going to cut corners on that. And so that caveat that it's a good time to get into it because there are a lot of opportunities to get your words out by there, but that doesn't mean like write a first draft, slap a homemade cover on it, and put it on Amazon.
Right.
I mean, you still have to take the time to learn your craft.
Yeah, 100%. And not only are they giving you their time, but if they like it, they're giving you the gift of telling somebody about it,
That's
which
right.
is going to sell more books than any other method. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and that's what I witness is like things take off when people talk about it.
Right.
You can do things to elevate yourself enough to hopefully get into that conversation. Um, but the minimum you have to do is have a great book. You have to write
Right.
well, you
Yeah.
have to learn, you can't cut corners, and you have to absorb and take critical feedback and be
Hmm.
thankful for the
Hmm.
opportunity to make your book better. And every one of those paths, it presents a massive stumbling block for a lot of people. They're just like, nope, so
Yeah.
and so didn't like it, I'm done, I quit.
Right,
you
right,
know
right. Yeah, and I mean, if you want to quit, then quit. I mean, that's another thing that I do have that conversation with people who are, at the beginning of their exploring the idea of writing, and they say, should I write a book? Should I write this book that I've been thinking about? And I'm like, well, can you imagine not writing the book? Because if you can imagine not writing the book, maybe don't write the
yeah,
book. But I mean, if it's, if you really have this passion for it and you're like, I really want to tell this story, then great, start working on it, see how it goes. And if you find it's not for you, I mean, I've known people who have started a writing project because they really thought they wanted to do it. And then, like you said, they come across a stumbling block and they're like, nah, I've got other things I think I'm better at and that I'd
right.
rather do. And that's okay. I mean, that would
Not
happen
only
to
is it,
me if
yeah,
like
it's
I
part of
studied it.
life, right? It's not
Exactly. I
failure.
mean,
It's like eliminating something you realize, like, okay, that's not it.
right, right, exactly. I mean, if I started to learn to play the piano, that's what would happen. I know this,
Right, right, right.
I could maybe blink out, a
But
couple
you going through
things,
the
jot
process of
things.
learning the piano is not a waste of time,
Right,
even if you quit it. It's like something you explored, and that because I did that with the guitar, and after a while, I'm like,
right. Yeah,
I don't have the passion for it, but I'm glad I took the time to learn a little bit. Now I know a little bit about
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And so one thing that's interesting, so let's talk about self-publishing a little bit. So when I first started writing, because I came from a place of pure, unbridled ignorance, not only about writing, but the publishing industry, self-publishing never entered my mindset because I needed that third-party validation from an agent, from an editor, whatever, somebody who I didn't know,
Mhm.
and to learn from that because and I also knew that once you self-publish, whatever you self-publish, it's out there just like anything else is out there. And you have to be very aware of that. And so I've never self-published, but I always had the thought, which is exactly what you did, is like once you get a name and once you get a following and a readership base, that feels like an interesting time to self-publish because you don't have to prove anything. You know you've been validated, and you know you have people who will buy your books, and all of a sudden, you get to keep a lot more of the sales. And I know you've gone, you're a New York Times best-selling author, so you have this track record. Um, what was that thought process to the road to self-publication?
Yeah, so I mean, with my first book, The Bookseller, which published in 2015, I was on the same track as you. I mean, I was like, no, I'm getting an agent and I want this to be traditionally published, preferably Big Five. And if that didn't happen, then I think I would have stepped back and
Or written
decided,
something else?
yeah, is this the right book? Do I need to write a completely different book? Do I need to? I don't think I would have said, fine, I'll just self-publish The Bookseller. Um, Thinking about where I was back then and what my thinking was like, that's the path that I was on. That's what I wanted to do. And I was not ready to cross the path to smaller presses or self-publishing at that point. I think the reason too was that, I mean, when I got my agent, my first agent, it was 2013 and self-publishing was kind of in its infancy and it wasn't great. I mean, I don't know if you remember some of the books that were out then, but like if you'd get a print copy of them, they looked like they were printed on like freaking copy paper, they were terrible. And I was just like,
Covers are
it's just
terrible. Yeah.
yeah, everything. And I was like, I don't want that. I want a book that looks like what you buy in a bookstore. So, and I was very fortunate because that's what happened. I got a wonderful agent and she sold my first book, The Bookseller, to Harper in a preempt, and it was a big deal book. And it did kind of launch me. I was extremely lucky with the right book at the right time with the right
Yeah.
people. So it did get me into, as you said, I kind of, I did establish a reader base and I established a lot of connections with booksellers and librarians and media. And so that made a big difference. And then my second book, I ended up at a different publisher because we know how those things go.
Hmm.
there was, it just my editor left Harper, and we ended up having to go somewhere else. So I ended up at Simon and Schuster at Touchstone for my second novel, The Glass Forest, and that came out in 2018. Um, and for that one, everything was great too. And I thought, well, this is it. This is my new publishing home. Touchstone's fabulous. I'll stay here forever. And 8 months after they got the books or the Glass Forest out, which they did a really good job with, but 8 months after it came out, Touchstone folded. So again, I had no publisher. They gave it to another imprint at Simon and Schuster, but they never gave me any support. So it's kind of publisherless
Yeah.
again. And then by the time, years later that I was ready, it took me a while for the next book, and I changed agents and a lot of things happened. But by the time I was ready with the next book, again, I was out there looking for a publisher again. So I never had this path of like, found one great traditional publisher, stayed with them, kept publishing a book and then a book and then a book. That's the way it works for a lot of people.
The next
And
book being Anyone But Her.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So, well, and then there was Denver Noir in between. So I did edit an anthology in between. And that was just a godsend. That came along during the pandemic. So I'm the editor of Denver Noir, which is part of Akashic Books noir series of these noir anthologies that are set in cities all over the country and all over the world. And so I'm the editor of the Denver volume. And we did that during pandemic. There's 14 authors in there, including Dave Wyden, who was on that panel with
Oh, yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And Mark Stevens and Barbara Nicholas, who I know you've
Everyone
done
we know.
events with, all kinds of, yeah, all the good. It was great. Peter
Yeah.
Heller has a story in there, so it was really fun. It was great, and that book came out in 2022, and by that time we could go out and do events again. It was super fun. I always say it's the best group project I ever did. So that was great because that kind of came in the middle of me working on Anyone But Her. But then it just took me a long time with this novel to get it where I wanted it to be. And by the time I did, again, I'd switched agents. My first agent took out a much earlier version of Anyone But Her, trying to find a publisher, and we just weren't getting the traction. And so I completely rewrote it, and she just didn't share my enthusiasm for it. So we parted ways, and this was in 2023. Amicably, we're still amicable. But I found a new agent right away, and she loved it. And so she took it up, but she couldn't go back to anybody that my first agent had gone to because that's just how the business
That's
works. Like
how it
if they've
is.
read one, yeah, if they've read one version of your book, they're not going to read it again, even if you say, no, 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 I changed it
Right.
completely.
Or if you
Um,
just hope they don't remember.
right. Well, she did. I mean, my new agent, the first thing she did was she said, send me a list of who your agent went to because I need to know that. And so I did that, and she looked at it and she's like, these are all the same people I would have gone to, but don't worry, we'll find somebody. So we did. And so she took that up, but we just, again, weren't getting the traction. And so we were kind of at the point, and this was late 23, where she said, I can start going to smaller process if you want. And I just, God bless the small process. I love the business that they do. I love that they're there. I love the opportunities they provide for authors, but it just wasn't the path I wanted to go down because I wanted the book out. It'd been a long time by then. I was almost 6 years since a novel of mine had come out, and it was time. And my novels are all standalone psychological suspense, so it wasn't a series or anything.
And
Um,
just to interrupt real quickly, at this point, so 6 years in with this novel being your third novel plus an anthology that you edited, now you have the confidence to say this is good enough to be published. That's not my fear. My fear isn't like they don't want it because they saw the earlier version and that screwed me because it's
right.
better now, but we can't go back to them. So I
Yeah,
totally get that, but you also
yeah,
know like how it is now, and you probably had agent feedback to this extent, is
right.
definitely out there in like it ranks with anything else that's getting published.
Yeah, sort of. But the one thing that I did do before I made a firm decision to self-publish it was I went back to my developmental editor that I'd worked with on the Bookseller way back early on because who's now one of my dearest friends and the person probably that I trust the most. She's
Oh,
got an
interesting.
amazing editorial
She's
eye.
just an independent editor.
Yeah, yep, she's
Yep.
an independent editor. And so I hired her again and I said, can you just read this? Because I'm thinking about self-publishing it and tell me, what do you think? Does it suck? I mean, I need a
Smart.
beyond my agent who loved it and the vague feedback that I'd gotten from the editors, which didn't help at all. I was like, I really need someone to give me an objective eye on this. And so she did. And she raised a particular issue that was really pivotal that I hadn't seen, my agent hadn't seen, and certainly
Hmm.
none of those editors
Isn't that
raised.
crazy?
It was crazy. I mean, So just to kind of give you a little background on anyone but her, it's set in Denver in 1979 and 2004, and it's a mother-daughter story and a ghost story. In 1979, the main character's 14, and her name is Suzanne, the main character, and her mother, Alex, owns a record store on East Colfax, and Alex is shot and killed at her record store during a holdup, during a robbery. Um, and then she comes back to Suzanne as a ghost, and because there's some suspicion about what actually happened in this situation, and she wants Suzanne, her 14-year-old, to investigate it. And then 25 years later, Suzanne, as an adult, is moves back to Denver with her family, and they're obviously the ghosts of the past are still kind of coming
Mhm.
along. So when my developmental editor read it, she said, I really love a lot about this, but I cannot get a handle on that ghost. Is she a ghost? Is she not a ghost? What's going on? And I realized, and that all she did was raise that question, but it was just one of those lightning bolt moments because it just made me realize that all along I'd been kind of wishy-washy about that.
Hmm.
I hadn't really done like, is Alex a ghost, or is this Suzanne's imagination?
And
What's
this is
happening?
and this is right, and this is just told from one point of view. So
Yeah,
you could be hinging on it just being an unreliable narrator who's got,
exactly. Right, right.
fugue state issues or whatever.
Right, exactly. So I realized that I either had to like do that, somehow go into that, or yank out the ghost thing or do a full lean in on it. And I'd
Mm.
always wanted to write a ghost story and I'd always envisioned it as a ghost story, but I just realized I had to be more firm about that. So I made Suzanne clairvoyant, and it was just a very firm lean in that yes, clearly she does see ghosts and has always seen ghosts her entire life. So she's not at all surprised when her mom shows up as a ghost when she's 14. And it makes the book so much stronger, so much better. But it's just that's kind of the value to me of a good developmental editor or a good coach or somebody who will not answer your question for you and tell you this is what you need to do,
Right.
but raise the question
A hundred
so that you
percent.
as the author can be like, oh, okay, now I know what I need to do. So I
Right.
did that. I have a couple friends who are clairvoyant. They read that version, gave me some wonderful feedback on that
Wow.
to make sure I was accurately portraying that character. And I really feel like the book was much stronger. So at that point, once I did that, then yeah, I had to go back to my agent, who was a new agent, and tell her that I was going to self-publish the book. And she understood. She totally understood.
But that's
She's
still a weird
she's.
conversation, right?
It
Because
was a weird
you are
conversation because I was like,
effectively carving them
yeah,
out.
yeah, is she going to dump me? And like, yeah. But she didn't. She really understood. She's like, look, it's a great book. And she said, I really support you doing this. And but she did say, do you want me to try to still sell the audio?
Oh,
And I was like, yeah, that'd be great because that's one less thing that I need to do. Otherwise, I would have gotten audio done, but it was just one less piece for me to
that's
do.
a
So she
huge
did
pain in the
sell
ass.
that. So yeah, I know, right? So she did get me a traditional audio publisher, Tantor. So the audio is traditionally published for anyone but her, which is nice. But I did the ebook and print book.
And I remember you saying on the panel, like, you're like, it's really hard.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, yeah. It's a steep learning curve to do it right. And kind of going back to what I said earlier about, the quality of those books early on, they've gotten so much better.
Oh yeah.
But
I mean, I
I
look at
had
your
made it
book now and I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, that's psychological thriller, just like I see
Yeah.
everywhere, from the look
Yeah,
and feel of it.
exactly. I mean, I'll hold up my cover, but that's it's kind of got that, you wanted that look. And that was my biggest splurge. Now, and I shouldn't even call it a splurge. My biggest investment was the cover design. I knew I wanted a good cover designer. I knew I wanted somebody who would get it and could make it look great with my traditionally published books so that they look like a suite of books, by the
Right.
same author, which they are. So I, wanted to make sure that that had that right look to it. And so that was kind of a big thing to make sure that happened. I talked to a lot of people who are self-published and kind of got their feedback and about the process and some of the things that they invested their money and their time in to see really where's your best place to put that kind of money and put that investment if you're going to go down this road.
Yeah. What surprised you the most going through the process?
I think just that amount of work. I mean,
Yeah.
it really was like and I knew this would happen, but there are a ton of little details that you need to attend to that you don't think about when you're traditionally published. I had to go get my own ISBNs, which are the numbers that
Right.
identify your book. I had to register my copyright. I had to register it with the Library of Congress. I had to do my own NetGalley to do early reviews. So
And
once I
presumably you
started,
could hire somebody to do all of that for you, but that would be a lot of money.
exactly, you can work with a hybrid company, which is what a lot of people do. And that's essentially what hybrids do, is do all that kind of stuff for you. Plus, a lot of them offer editorial, but I didn't need that because I had a great developmental editor. And I just felt like I have enough technical knowledge and I like researching and I like
It's
learning
kind of
new things that,
interesting too.
yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah.
And I did design my own interior pages, which is actually pretty easy.
Yeah.
There are a
Interesting.
couple of really nice programs out there to do that. One is Atticus and the other one is Vellum, and they're really easy to use. And it's just, again, it kind of helped to have the traditionally published books because I would just like look at the title page of the bookseller and be like, well, how did HarperCollins do that? Because that's how I'm doing it.
Right.
So
So as this, you kind of mentioned that you still have your agent and your agent handled the audio. Is the plan, what's the plan? Is the plan to like go back to pitching, or is the plan to like pitching and if not, then this, or what?
yeah, probably. I'm working on another novel, and I certainly will give it to her when it's done. And again, it's standalone psychological suspense, and we'll just see if she likes it and wants to work with me and wants to try to find me a publisher. Great, I would certainly go down that path. And but it's nice to know that I have this as another way that I could get my next book out if I wanted to,
Yeah,
and I know how to do it.
it's fantastic. Well, Cynthia, we're going to wrap up. Before we do, we're going to do our little storytelling. If you're up for it, I don't care if you're up for it. You got to do it.
Got to do it. I've heard. Yeah, that's a requirement if I'm going to be here. I get
I
it.
only had, this is probably going to be episode number 205 or something like that. I've only had
Oh my
one
gosh.
author or one group of authors, or there was a double who kind of said ahead of time, like, we don't want to do that. And I'm like, okay, I don't want anyone to be
Well,
unhappy, but
I will tell you right now as a preface that I am not the best at improv. It's not my skill set, but
oh,
we'll try
neither am
it. We'll
I.
see what
Yeah,
happens.
no, it's going to be horrible.
Awesome.
um,
Good to know.
so I've chosen three books at random off of my bookshelves. You're going to choose one of these books. We're going to choose a random sentence from a random page. I'm going to read that sentence, and that'll be the first sentence in like a 2 minute long short story. We'll just kind of alternate back and forth until it goes so far off the rails that I'll call it. So I've got John Case's The Genesis Code, the wonderful Matt Goldman's The Murder Show, and Jacqueline Winspear's The Comfort of Ghosts. So choose one of
Ooh.
those.
We better go with the ghosts since that's now
It's-
my new area, right?
yeah, and it's funny. I was thinking when you were mentioning about that, it's so true what you said, because if so, for example, if you were shopping that book, the publisher needs to know what book is it, a supernatural book or is it a psychological thriller? Like, it's a huge difference
Right.
because it
Exactly.
depends on where it gets shelved sometimes.
Right.
So
Oh, I know. Yeah. When I look at it now, that's where it's kind of gaining its popularity. It's like ghost mysteries and ghost
right,
suspense and stuff like that.
totally,
And I'm not so sure it would have been categorized that way before when I
it would have
didn't
been
have that
too
firm
right.
lean in.
Give me a page number between 1 and 342.
Uh, 221.
That's so weird. I just opened up the book and was waiting for you to say something, and I was on page 221.
It's the ghosts.
So
It's the ghosts.
that's actually never happened before. That's really, really bizarre.
Ooh, it's eerie. Okay.
All right, I'm going to quickly scan this and find a sentence. It's heavy on dialogue, which is always good. All right, this is a quote, but it can be internal. It can be whatever. You do whatever you want with this. He had an idea something like that would happen.
But he wasn't sure what his next step should be.
He looked down. The man on the floor, he thought was still alive. He could nudge him with his foot, but he wasn't sure that he wanted the confirmation. It was going to be a long day.
Hesitantly, he tapped his toe against the man's middle. A pool of blood began spilling out.
He used the man's jacket to wipe the blood off of his loafers, not wanting any DNA on them at all. And then he did what he knew he had to do, what he had come here to find the whole time. He had to go through those jacket pockets.
He took a breath, then reached down and into the left pocket. His hand froze as it clasped around the man's wallet.
He pulled it out, took a deep breath, and closed his eyes just long enough to say a prayer to whatever might be listening to him out there, although he was pretty sure there would be nothing. He opened up the billfold and instantly saw the ID and the name that he wasn't expecting.
It was, as he was worried would happen, his son's best friend.
Oh, we call it there. That's good. He killed his son's best friend. What a jerk.
My mistake. I'm sure he didn't mean to do it.
See, that wasn't so hard.
My sons are going to hear this and be like, what?
I know. Now it's an idea for the next book.
Right.
Well, I'm glad we got a chance to catch up and kind of talk in more length for the first time. And congratulations again on the award. And, I'm surprised we haven't kind of met for coffee or anything since we're also in the same area. So I would love to do that sometime.
I would too. Thank you so much, Carter. This has been a delight.
Thanks, Cynthia. Take care.
Okay,
Bye.
You too. Bye.
So that is it. That is my conversation with Cynthia Swanson. This is definitely one of those episodes where I finished talking to the person. I'm like, I learned stuff today. And I love that feeling. And that happens most of the times, but it was really interesting to hear Cynthia talk about kind of going through that journey of self-publishing and what she learned from it and the difficulties, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to check out her book, Anyone But Her, and all of her other books, you can just go to her website, cynthiaswansonauthor.com. You can pop on over to carterwilson.com and buy my books, check out my newsletter, other episodes of Making It Up, and all the other good stuff that I have on there. And if you're an aspiring writer or struggling writer and you're looking for coaching help, you can go on over to unboundwriter.com and see the services that I offer there. Okay, that is it. We are wrapping up this episode. Another one out just next week. Thanks, as always, for watching and or listening. And until the next episode, as always, take care.